All that because I read a Zain tweet, and that got the noggin jogging. The same Zain of getting fucked up by Rap Monster at Genesis fame. You know, I also had a had occasion to think about something else that appears in sort of the cultural lexicon more than more than socialism would, but like I think it's relevant to socioeconomic and cultural critique. You guys know all those like Sigma grindset posts, like to the extent that it's it's now become sort of a meme for how patently ridiculous the aesthetic is. Work 12 hours a day, sleep for 4 hours, get up early as fuck in the morning, get that bread, grind, Sigma grind set, like that sort of aesthetic, that sort of social media trend, fad almost. That it's sort of like it's a very 21st century, very accelerated version of the Protestant work ethic, which I've talked about in another video. You guys should watch that. How the Protestant work ethic, in its moralistic veneration of being hardworking, effectively advocates as a virtue that you be submissive to authority. You can derive this from first principles like I did in that video, but it's also confirmed in like government documentation that state agencies and corporations signal boosted a lot of the more insane elements of Protestant Christian pastors, precisely because that was the ideology they wanted to produce, one of subservience to authority, one where capital would go unchallenged. The Sigma grind set is much like the secularized internet version of the Protestant work ethic, in that it's like, oh yeah, hard work is a virtue, but being sort of earnest, being like earnest about that, striking an earnest tone, which was wont to happen before the days of the internet, is sort of cringe. So they re-aestheticize it as a more not quite ironic, but bombastic and aggressive sort of almost like drill instructor yelling at you, which is also, I think, psychosexually relevant given the obsession with work and authority. It's a very, very alienating mindset. So, what I want to get down to is, the similarities between these two ideologies are numerous, but key among them that I sort of focused on this time, and what I wanted to mention, is that the Sigma grind set kind of talking points and whole spiel that a lot of the like influencers who were grifting the whole time, obviously, but that sort of shit. Yeah, it's essentially like, it's attempting to make a positive and constructed identity to and potentially even some twisted version of a constructive identity out of being a sad loser. It's like, hey, look, you may be a sad loser with no job and no friends, but you can still seize upon the opportunity to work 14 hours a day in the hopes that one day you will be wealthy and thus not a sad loser. Again, part and parcel, another thing here is the worship of wealth, the worship of affluence and class identity, the aspiration to the owning class. But yeah, it is like a very alienating thing, because it sort of doubles down on the contradictions, the social contradictions that people experience, having a sort of loser ideology, essentially, loser mentality, mindset, whatever. It sort of re-embeds the assumption that work cannot be for the purpose of gratification. In a twisted way, you could argue that work should lead to gratification, but the Sigma grind set mentality, the mantra, inherently implies that work itself cannot be gratifying. It is a grinding experience. It is unpleasant entirely. It's a sort of, further capitulation to the idea that work is slavery and slavery is work, and this is a natural component of society. And what made me start thinking about this was just a random tweet from Zain, where he was like posting about how he was going to practice with Cody Schwab, my favorite Melee live streamer. And the post was something like, grinding with Cody, grind set. Neither of us are going to have fun. And like there will be suffering or something. And I looked at it, rationally understanding, like obviously Zain is parodying this Sigma grind set type shit because he's a funny guy. You know, and plenty of people have taken to parodying it because of how openly over the top it is. But it did get me thinking that like this is just a way to positively reframe alienation, to offer a justification for the current system. Funnily enough, as much as the Sigma grind set leads to pickup artists and the red pill and the far right pipeline, all that sort of shit, is very much a hallmark of economic liberalism. You know, the accumulation of wealth. And when I say economic liberalism, I don't even necessarily mean trade that expands very widely so that people's needs can be met. No, I mean like the neoliberal elements of economic liberalism, where the spice must flow, sacrifice all at the altar of line going up. You know, everything must be for the sake of efficiency and maximizing output and product. You know? Yeah, these are the same kinds of people that would hold nihilism as simply a necessary part of adulthood. That like, oh yeah, nihilism is just the correct attitude to take towards life. That the world is not worth living in. These people are, like, fundamentally, these people are very weak. And they are very submissive. But this ideology appeals to them because of the contradiction that offers. They are very submissive, and this is a very submissive ideology. But it is aestheticized with the characteristics of dominance. It has the trappings of a dominant and confident person, being loud, being sounding authoritative, being aggressive, that sort of thing. You know? Basically, I am calling you a bottom bitch if you are on your Sigma grind set type shit. Yes, being nihilistic and living with such depressive ideologies and ideas constant in your brain does in fact shorten your lifespan. You know? It's not good for you. It's really not. And it's not good for society either, because there's also an implicit acceptance. This is one thing I actually didn't touch on, is how individualist this is. It sort of neglects the concept of community. Another significant element of the Sigma grind set narrative is the sort of concept of the self-made man, the self-made millionaire, self-made social media influencer, whatever it is, right? Where you must have done it all yourself with no help, no social connections, and no friends. Where it's sort of one of the ways that it actually doubles down on that social alienation is it sort of insists that not being alienated is a weakness. It insists that it is a strength that you are lonely and afraid and like insecure, you know? But this is even taking it, I think, more seriously, like, as an ideology that people adhere to than it merits. If we're talking about the kind of people that adhere to it, none of them obviously believe in it, you know? They are just scams, salesmen looking for their next mark, for the next rube to con. You know? But I think because there are people that are taken in by it, it warrants examination from an academic perspective. But the cost of this, the cost of this mindset, this subset of neoliberal ideology, re-aestheticized with masculinity, individualism, hyper devotion to work, and the submission to economic authority, despite the fact that it perpetuates perpetuates. It lengthens the lifespan of neoliberalism ever so slightly, while simultaneously ensuring its downfall. Because all the contradictions of neoliberalism produce this, you know, it is a reflection of neoliberalism in a more advanced stage of decay. it also contributes to the unsustainability of the system that it is a product of, you know? If that makes sense. Basically, the more that neoliberalism sucks over time, the more its ideological justifications will also suck. So even if they serve as an ideological justification mechanism, that it's like a star burning through its fuel reserves. Hydrogen is the longest, right? That composes the vast majority of a star's lifespan. But then once it starts burning through the other elements, its phases of life grow continuously shorter and shorter. And a similar thing happens to systems where we're actually watching in real time the ideological pipelines for manufacturing and defense of the system grow shorter and shorter. Each phase of rhetoric is more brief than the last. You know, Sigma grindset being one of them. It was born and killed entirely within the late 2010s. You know. And to an extent, the early 2020s. At maximum, it had a lifespan of 10 years. You have any idea how short that is for, like, an ideology or sub-ideology? And likewise, it's sort of contemporaries. It's ideological contemporaries and parallels in the far-right pipeline, in, you know, the pickup artists, the red pills, and whoever else. Their prominence grew progressively shorter and shorter as well. You know, Andrew Tate was only relevant for a few years. Like, at most, Andrew Tate was relevant for maybe 3 years. Sure, like the ideology that he was the figurehead of may have lasted a bit longer, but, you know, it seems like each right-wing influencer, unless they are specifically and actively propped up with state power, it seems like they are doomed to, they're doomed to fizzle very quickly because of how alienated people are and how apathetic and nihilistic they are. Ironically, because of the very ideologies that these movements, these sort of rhetorical flourishes have instilled into people, they're continually guaranteeing their own ever-quickening destruction. You know? I'm bad, but I'm necessary. Yes, it is kind of like that. And yes, if there were equal footing, the left would win with ease. You know? There's just so much more compelling aspiration to be found on the left than the right. The left is just way more hopeful. All that because I read a Zain tweet, and that got the noggin jogging. The same Zain of getting fucked up by Rap Monster at Genesis fame. You know? I dropped my controller. Anyways. Save for some, you know, gradual offshoots of that conversation. Future me, you can cut the segment there, I suppose. Shoutouts to Zain. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, even donate to support the channel. It would really mean a lot to me.